Hi, I'm Chris. Welcome back to the channel and welcome to my first episode of Design Doctor, the show where I take designs of dolls or anything else that I find not great and do how I would have done it. Who am I, you may ask? I have a simple little bachelor's in costume design and I just really like designing, and I had a little career as a cosplayer who has done panels about cosplay design for Comic-Con and other conventions. So I like to take what I learned in school of design and use it for whatever. Maybe I should be designing more for like real projects. It's hard with my career. So the first series that I'm doing for all of this is the Villains Midnight Masquerade Disney Designer Doll series, which if you've been watching this channel, you've heard me bitch about many times. A lot of my problems with the doll series, the designer doll series of this, was that they were all really tacky looking. A lot of the costumes I found to not be appropriate for who the characters are. I just really wanted to do it in my own way. I think what makes a good doll line, or like just good costume design in general, is consistency in the storytelling, consistency in the overarching theme of it. The Disney Premiere series is actually a really good example. You know, they're not cohesive in the sense that they're all matchy, but you understand that all their designs are supposed to be influenced by the years that they came out. The first Midnight Masquerade series, they're all kind of just in these pretty gowns with masks, and there isn't anything very specific or unique. But then when you look at the Villains Masquerade series, a majority of their masks are a reference to something in their own films. This is where I came to my idea of what this line should have been. We think about a masquerade. We're all taking on a different personality, or we're hiding who we are. We are being somebody that isn't who we usually are. Something that is very specific to a majority of the Disney villains that were in the original Midnight Masquerade line is transformation. 4 out of 6 of them have had a transformation in their respective films. I was thinking about what I would have done, how I would have redid this entire line, was having all of their costumes be references to their transformations. Not saying that they'd be in full-on costumes, but you look at it and you understand where we're coming from in their costuming. The Disney Showcase or UNESCO or one of those, I forget which company it is right now, but they've done statues as well of like Masquerade with masks, and I did take that into consideration. I'm not saying I'm being completely original. Like, of course, it's gonna be a dragon inspiration for Maleficent. So, you know, I'm not saying I'm being completely groundbreaking with this entire concept, but, you know, it's always up for interpretation. So this is how I was going to interpret it. The 6 characters that were in the Midnight Masquerade were Maleficent, Lady Tremaine, Ursula, Yzma, the Evil Queen, and Hades. I decided, if I'm going to keep this concept of transformation, I am eliminating Lady Tremaine and I'm eliminating Hades from this line. I had already picked one new character that I am doing, but I am letting my patrons on Patreon vote on who the wild card is going to be for this line, and there's one out of the wild cards I want to do more than the others, so please don't fail me on that. First doll that was released was the Maleficent. My big critique of it was that she looked way too sexy. I didn't like that they used the face that wasn't a classic animated Maleficent face. They used hers from the 2012 designer line, which was all fashion inspired by the Disney villains. I now know that we wanted to be dragon inspired. As you see, her mask does kind of look like it's supposed to be dragon inspired. So her overall look, I decided it should be something dragon inspired. Something that came to mind was that dragon dress by Mugler. So that became part of my jumping off point for the design. So now we're gonna get into who the character Maleficent is. We see in her transformation that she literally rises up through flames to become this dragon. So for the design, flames had to be incorporated, and then something dragon had to be incorporated. I understand with this that it's supposed to be for dolls, and I tried to keep my design somewhat realistic for a doll, but I kind of, in my mind, just kept thinking about like a regular costume design. So step one for any design is your research. I think that you always need at least some sort of historical reference for a majority. For Disney movies, I don't really particularly buy into them actually taking place in whatever period. A lot of people will be like, Beauty and the Beast takes place in the 18th century. Like, it's fact. It's not fact, actually, at all. And to be fair, I don't particularly hold grudges against Disney films for not being completely historically accurate when their main point is to sell dolls to kids. However, for certain things like the live action Beauty and the Beast, when you're going to go through all the trouble to make everybody else truly look 18th century and then have this dress be the centerpiece, that's something that pisses me off. Be consistent in your world building. And this line, it's going to be weird because I'm going to use references from different cultures and from different time periods, because I have to keep in mind that these characters all came from different worlds, basically. The first thing you should do when you're designing a play or a movie or a musical or whatever is understanding your source material. Script analysis. What we know about Maleficent is that she's the mistress of evil, as said in the script. You have to pick up the context clues within the story of whatever you're creating your costume of. So all we really know about Sleeping Beauty is it takes place in the 14th century. Why do we know it takes place in the 14th century?
Now, Father, you're living in the past. This is the 14th century.
The 14th century is not particularly my favorite. I did begin with historical references, and I first went to the picture collection in the New York Public Library, and I started pulling some pictures of fashion plates and any art I could find from the 14th century. So part of my history research for this Maleficent was thinking about what a masked ball was in the 14th century. The entire line is about Masquerade. So I first looked up if masked balls were even a thing in the 14th century, and I learned something actually really fascinating. During the reign of King Charles VI, who was known as the Mad King, January 28th, literally one day before Sleeping Beauty came out, like not in the same year, you know what I mean, there was a ball called the Ball of the Burning Men. So knowing that there were people basically on fire kind of worked with Maleficent, cause flames. And I also took a trip to the Metropolitan Museum of Art because I really like going there to look at all the different art and architecture and artifacts from whatever time period, because I actually like to use different things about that time period. Of course, the one day that I need the medieval section, the day I went, it was blocked off for some event. I kind of had to take pictures of what I could that could have been somewhat helpful, but a big problem for me is a lot of the art in the Metropolitan Museum of Art for this time period is essentially art of religion. Maleficent literally says all the powers of hell, so that was not super helpful. I did still take photographs just to think maybe like there is some sort of like historical reference within the statues. I had to find the statues that straight up were not of just like Jesus. But luckily also the Metropolitan Museum of Art has a fantastic backlog on their website that I got to go through. I found some paintings that I never saw before, but then also something that really inspired me was looking at pictures from the cloisters. I didn't get to go to the cloisters. I was busy with work. And just looking at all of the stained glass art from the 14th century, and something about the patterning kind of started inspiring me. So I pulled a few images of that. But then also there were all these fragments of glass that could have been from glass windows, stained glass art. And the colors were really inspiring me because a lot of them were very relevant to Maleficent as a character. As I kept collecting these images, I made a color palette collage of the stained glass fragments to be my color palette for Maleficent. Another part of my picture collection inspiration though too was Maleficent becomes a dragon well, dragons are not real, but they are very relevant to reptiles. So I pulled some books of different lizards and snakes, and I started looking at their textures, the textures of the skin, and thinking, what if her dress was all scales? Something 14th century silhouette inspired, but with scales. So I took some inspiration from a few particular images from my 14th century references, and I did really quick sketches of those 14th century dresses from some of the images I pulled from my references. It was starting to pinpoint the particular lines and silhouettes I wanted to use for Maleficent for this. I had to look particularly at what pieces would work for the flames, what would look good with a like reptilian skin, if that makes any sense. And then also thinking about, does she need a cowl? And this picture had a cowl. I did not mean to make it look like the live action Angelina Jolie Maleficent. That was totally not planned, and oops. And I started playing with how big the scales would be, where would they stop. I originally was going to give her like a full train of flames, but I realized that might be a little too much. Next step was figuring out exactly what colors I wanted to use for this design. So I took my glass collage and I brought it to a paint shop, and then I picked up literally, you know, the free paint sample cards you get. I just kind of started matching the picture to anything that looked somewhat relevant, and I just started pulling them all, and then I brought them home. Started trying to figure out exactly what colors would be used where. So now we have our color swatches. We had to figure out what actual fabrics would be used. Even though this doll will probably never get made, this costume will never get made, when you're designing, it's really important to try to use real fabrics and real things to help your design so people can understand how it could be made and how realistic it could be. I think it really does help with creativity when you see like, oh, maybe I could use this lace with this kind of color, and then it helps you when you like folded everything to see how a fabric would lay. This one was so hard for texture because I really wanted that good reptilian look, but I wanted it to be a little bit looser. I ended up doing something that I don't know if I really was successful. So right before I hopped into the fabric shops, I actually went into a trimming store that was on the way. Sometimes I like to try to find a beading or a trimming to kind of help inspire what would end up being. And I found these little holographic, they shine gold, blue, and green beads. And there's something reptilian about them. There were two different types. And so that became my jumping off point about what fabrics I was going to use. So these are just some swatches. So this is where I thought I was gonna go with it, with something kind of really super shiny, but then I realized that would look way too much with the jewels that I got. I wanted a little bit of sheen, but not too much. This was actually a very different fabric. This was silver and it was a lot stretchier. And I kind of was looking because I liked the texture of how it looked, but I wanted it to be the colors that I wanted it to be. So this actually was weathered a lot with a bunch of different paints. It took me a while to like actually get into exactly how I wanted it to look. I used black paints, gold paints, green paints, blue paints, silver paints. And then I used a little bit of metallic markers to like dot like different colors in it. I don't know if you can fully see. I think it shines different in different lights too. Doing all of that got me to this, which is what I ended up wanting for Maleficent. Now we've got our inspiration board. So we've got the Maleficent transformation and the dragon and everything. We've got, this is from the glass fragments and everything. So we've got stuff from our historical research, our reptile research, and then this is a Venetian mask and a lace mask that I found from the picture collection that I found very interesting, and that ended up being references to how I was going to do the dragon mask. And as you see here, we've got all of our swatches. There's those beads I was talking about and everything else. This is going to be for the arms, this is going to be for the fascinator, this is the wrap of the cowl. And then these are our flame colors. There was originally going to be 5, and then I realized that might have been a little too much. I stuck with just 3. One more round of sketching before we got to painting. And now, for your enjoyment, here is a speed up of the drawing and painting process of the final image for Maleficent. have it. So this is what I would have done for the Maleficent Midnight Masquerade series. Pretty happy with it. The next in this line that I'm doing is Ursula. As of the day that I'm filming this, I have already started figuring out what I'm doing for Ursula. If you want to see the full-on vlogs of my Maleficent journey and better pictures of my sketches and my drawing process, then please go check out my Patreon. Patreon starts for me at $1, and then $3 gives you all the vlogs and everything. And on my Patreon, you will get to vote on who the wild card is for this line. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.